Hello everyone, welcome to Conjunctions in Astrology. This time we're looking at the conjunction of Venus and Mars in your chart. What does this mean for your destiny, including readings from the signs and houses? If you're new to my channel, don't forget to sub below. And if the video is good for you, give it a thumbs up. Let's begin. But firstly, do you actually have a conjunction of Venus and Mars in your chart? You may think you do, but you may not have. A conjunction in the ancient Vedic system is about planets being in the same sign together, because a sign equals a house. So, if two or more planets are in the same sign, no matter how far apart they are by degree, they are in conjunction. But if one planet is 29 degrees of one sign, let's say, and the other planet at 0 of the next sign, that's not a conjunction, even though they are only 1 degree apart in space, because they are in different signs, therefore different houses, with a completely different lord. Another point to consider is the nakshatra. If planets are in a different nakshatra but in the same sign, are they still forming conjunction? Most definitely they are, because the nakshatra just gives them an internal experience, but they're still in the same sign, they're still sharing the experience of that house, and they are still in a conjunction. So if Venus and Mars are together in the same sidereal sign, they are forming a conjunction. This conjunction is known as a Gandanta yoga in astrology because it is a merging of fire and water energies. It can be exciting but terribly unstable, and it's a little bit misunderstood in astrology. So the first thing to do, I think, is to look at the energies involved. And who then is Venus? Venus is known as Sukra in the Vedic system. He is the demigod, the deva, in control of all of the joys of life, the arts, music, singing, dancing, all of the entertainments that make us feel relaxed and happy. But his primary purpose is to get us connected to other human beings, specifically for the purpose of reproduction. Venus is intimately connected to that feeling of desire and love for another human being. Specifically, of course, he rules semen, as I said, the reproductive act itself. It is Venus that represents all of our intimate relationships, specifically love relationships, but also friendship in some ways as well. And he is definitely connected to the wife in a male chart. This must be seen. He represents wealth as well, but it's the usable wealth that we purchase luxuries of life, not necessities. This is Venus. And who is Mars? Mars is known as Mongol in the Vedic system. He's associated also with Kartikeya, the general of the army of the gods. He is a fighter for justice, for every righteous cause. He protects those who are vulnerable, the weak, and especially the family. Mars is also the son of Bhumi, Mother Earth, and therefore he has complete control over this Bhuloka, this earthly plane. He becomes very strong in this age of Kali, which we are currently in, the age of conflict, argument, and violence. He becomes exalted in the sign of Capricorn, which is like a graveyard, because Mars is exulting in the dead. He is exulting in the enemies he has destroyed. But on the positive side, Mars is our stamina, energy, and our courage to get things done. He is our motivating factor. So when he is well placed, he gives you this in abundance. Mars is Karika, representative for brothers, also the home, the land, property, sporting activities, computers, and mathematics. He is also connected to astrology very, very strongly. But when he is afflicted in the chart, there can be violence, anger, jealousy, disruption, and many conflicts. Therefore, we must always control Mars energy for best effect. So a very potent conjunction, Venus-Mars. Let me first of all just say that yes, you can see this in the D9. I'm always asked this question. All of my conjunction videos can be seen in Navamsa. And Venus-Mars is particularly important to take note of if it should be in D9, because Venus relates to relationships. So when Venus and Mars come together in your chart, it's a Gandanta yoga, as I say. It's a clash of opposite types of energy, water and fire, and it creates a great deal of instability in your life. It's a quite exciting yoga in some ways, but as I say, misunderstood. It's certainly going to create a big tension inside you. And you may say, well, opposites attract. The secret is, everybody, they do, but not for long. And of course, Venus and Mars rule opposite signs. Venus rules Taurus and Libra, Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. And if any of those 4 signs should be your ascendant, then this Venus-Mars crosses that first 7th house axis, having a very potent karmic effect on your relationships. We need to carefully understand then this clash of energies, everybody. Venus is love, romance, coming together for sexual intercourse, basically ultimately creating babies. Mars is a celibate warrior. He has no interest whatsoever in any of these things. He is not going to be seduced by Venus. He is not going to be interested in any of Venus's enticements at all, believe me. So this is a very strong clash indeed. It's virtually like a war. You see, Mars absolutely rules celibacy, the absolute giving up of sexual connections, and Venus is what promotes sexual connection. This tension, this clash inside you is going to promote some issues in your life. But to get a real grip on the energies of Venus-Mars, there is a lot of misunderstanding, particularly in the Western system. It's gone a little crazy. I had a little check on this actually just to see how it's going these days, and my goodness, I was not disappointed. I read one description: Venus is like a princess and Mars is like a knight in shining armor. So a great deal of unhelpful romanticizing of this Venus-Mars conjunction, opposition, whatever it is in your chart, has been going on, giving people a complete misrepresentation what's happening. Yes, Mars may, metaphorically so, rescue a maiden in distress, but only because she is a vulnerable person, as I've just described. He wants to help them. But once she is safe, he will leave her behind. He doesn't want romance, love, or any sort of sexual engagement. Now, while it's certainly true that Venus conjunct to Mars will increase sexual desire, sexuality, even sensuality, it's not because of Mars, everyone. It's because of the fire, the agony of Mars. The fire is burning up the Jala water, evaporating it virtually, but bringing it to boiling point to begin with. So at the beginning of your life, my goodness, what sexual desire, what sensuality, depending on sign and the house, it can become very extreme. When it is afflicted, not in a helpful sign, Venus-Mars can lead to sex addiction, pornography addiction, even to working in sex industry itself or engaging in prostitution. So this agony fire of Mars here firing up Venus can actually lead to risky behavior. You've got to be very careful that you don't put yourself into a dangerous situation. Some people with this Venus-Mars. You see, everyone, both Venus and Mars are being harmed when they come together in this way. They are both being harmed. Some of their karaka significances will be damaged. So Venus's tender romantic nature is harmed by this ruthless connection to Mars. Mars has none of this tenderness. He wants what he wants when he wants it, and that's the end of it. And still, Mars's go-getter, courageous, warrior nature is dissipated by the conjunction to Venus. This means in real terms in your life, everyone, is that relationships ruled by Venus become sometimes impulsive. You become obsessive. You become highly sexual. You want who you want and you will brook no interference. You would wait for years to get the person who you want, even if they are totally incompatible. In general, though, for everybody, Venus-Mars coming together like this, and when they are particularly close as well, by degree, it's very intense. You are going to have difficulties early on in life. Relationships, motivation, all of these things, and particularly before age 28, when Mars matures. At that age, actually, late 20s, there's a big decision made, many people, about relationships and even about children, childbirth. But there is this definite impulsivity about attraction, relationships, infatuation, short-term affairs, one-night stand, extramarital affairs are all very common with everybody with this Venus-Mars. It definitely needs to be controlled in our charts. Worst case scenario, very afflicted Mars's violence comes into relationships. Violence of your own passions, violence of your own desire, but also physical violence. Sometimes abusive situations can happen. You should watch this Venus-Mars very carefully in a female chart. It isn't always physical violence, though. Venus Mars can show emotional manipulation, emotional abuse, and it can be coming from yourself or from person who you are with, either way. So you've got to be very, very careful. You can fall for the completely wrong people for you very often, I've seen, because of the strong sexual attraction. So watch people who you are attracted to. Get to know people slowly. It's really important. In some charts, Venus-Mars conjunction can actually cause sexual scandal, where there is some disapproval publicly of your activities. Another level, Venus along with the moon, you need to study moon as well, is about pregnancy, childbirth. So in a female chart, there can be unexpected pregnancy, there can be difficulty with conception or difficulty with childbirth. Again, you should also study the moon and the whole chart. So yes, Venus-Mars is not an easy conjunction. There are some difficulties and some rather unsavory situations can develop. Still, you have passion, you have a real commitment to things which you want in life. You can get what you want in life actually by your total commitment to them. Just make sure they are actually good for you. That's the thing. What rescues, though, Venus-Mars from the many negative factors is the aspect of Jupiter. Now, don't forget, though, that Venus rules physical beauty. Sometimes people with this Venus-Mars can be very good-looking, very magnetic, charismatic people. You attract people to you. You can be fun-loving, daring, exciting personality, and people like to be around you. So what to do to make relationships more harmonious if you have this Venus-Mars? Most importantly, avoid secrecy. You should be honest at all times with your partner. Even if you are tending to think, I can just not talk about this with them, you must do. Openness, honesty helps relationships when you have Venus conjunct Mars. Secondly, engage Mars positively. Do something outside in the world together, keeping fit together, going for hikes together, whatever it is. This helps Venus-Mars feel more harmonious. And do something big in the world, like political, humanitarian work, charity work. All of these things make Venus-Mars more positive. Again, it's about letting Mars take the lead here, Mars being more positive. So in your own life, keep your focus on your goals. Don't be distracted by laziness, Venus, by sensuality, by things which distract you. Keeping yourself focused on your worthy goals in life will contain this Venus-Mars energy. Don't forget Venus is artistry as well, and well-placed sign and house, Venus-Mars can enhance this. You can have artistic talent, singing, dancing, theatre work, all of these things. Where there is active engagement, where there is stamina needed, Venus-Mars can be helpful. Finally, everyone, a quite interesting factor about this Venus-Mars conjunction. Mars rules Scorpio, quite an austere and secretive sign, as I've just been mentioning, but a little bit reclusive sometimes. The older that you get, you become more inward. You go more into a more basic and even Spartan lifestyle. You may be forced into this stance by circumstances, or you simply choose it. To live a more basic, simple, Spartan lifestyle, no matter how much wealth you may have, makes you happier. Let's look at the sign placements, everybody, starting with the fire signs in Aries, Leo and Sagittarius. Mars is super strong and Venus is definitely being affected by this conjunction. It's especially strong up to age 28, as I've indicated on the video. And Venus-Mars here can get you into some compromising situations. It's passionate. It's all revved up with desire. Venus-Mars has to be contained and controlled when it's in fire signs. You should certainly take a remedy when you have Venus-Mars fire signs, because the cooling factor of Venus is being virtually obliterated. It's hard to have a cool head when you are feeling emotionally vulnerable, when you are in the middle of emotional and sexual situations. You're certainly a very creative person. Venus-Mars in these fire signs can give creative and artistic ability sometimes. Definitely you are magnetic and charismatic personality. Use it wisely. In the earth signs of Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn, Venus and Mars can be contained, brought down to earth. The whole Gandanta is softened mostly in these signs, particularly Taurus and Virgo. You can have some of those bumpy, difficult rides I've been talking about emotionally, sexually, but you will contain them. You will not let them throw you off course very often. It's a little bit more iffy when we get to Capricorn though, because Mars has become exalted, super powerful here. Later in life it will all calm down, but there can be some compromising and difficult moments, particularly in your career status, because this can be impacted negatively. Capricorn relates to the 10th house of career and status in life, so be careful about any compromising situations. It's quite good financially though. Venus-Mars makes you quite a, let's say, together person dealing with monetary factors. You can be a little bit manipulating sometimes if it is afflictive, but generally it can be good for your finances. Venus-Mars in the air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. You know how to get on with all sorts of people. You can manipulate people's emotions if you so like. You must avoid doing this. You certainly know how to relate to people though, and people are extremely attracted to you or when you have Venus-Mars in these air signs. It can give you great communication skill. You can be skilled in any area where you are dealing with financial factors, beauty industry, artistic factors, all of these because of your great communication skills. Now, Libra is probably the least difficult here because Mars has been toned down and Venus is very strong. Still, there can be compromising situations relationship-wise. You are highly idealistic. Are you really coming down to earth? But still, there is business skill here and there is great ability for wealth generation actually in all of these signs. In every sign, of course, Venus-Mars gives intense emotions, but especially in water signs. In Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, your emotions are really strong and hugely sexual. So you express emotions through your sex nature, and sometimes this is okay, but sometimes it can really take you into not a good place. You have to watch the aspects and how it's working for you. In all of these signs, watch your health as well, because this unexpressed contained emotion, very often it is unexpressed, is going to lead to health problems even, because water is all about the health of our body. Sometimes psychological therapy or some creative outlet for your emotions will help tremendously with Venus-Mars in any of these water signs. Pisces, Venus and Mars can rise above all of the trauma, all of the difficulty, because Mars is in the sign of his good friend Jupiter and Venus is exalted. By containing emotions, putting it into religious, philosophical and deep spiritual pursuits, actually Venus-Mars virtually regenerates itself in Pisces. Let's look at the houses, everybody. First of all, the 1st, 4th, 7th and 10th, the Kendra houses. If you should have Venus-Mars in any of these houses, it's going to create a really up and down energy in your life. It can be really quite dramatic. In the 1st house, Venus-Mars gives you great personal charisma. You can be good looking, attractive, or in some way charismatic. You attract other people to you with the vitality of your energy. But it does tend to extreme tendencies sometimes, especially when there are other malefics, either 7th house or with this conjunction. Relationships get disturbed. You can be full of passion, full of desire, but then completely change your track. You've got to watch for impulsivity. You can do something new on the spur of the moment and you are endlessly creative, digging yourself out of very, very difficult situations. There is no lack of initiative, just some lack of steadiness when you have Venus-Mars in the 1st house. It's hard to settle in your domestic situation when you have Venus-Mars 4th house. Early home life can be disturbed also. Still, you can have many properties because Venus is more than happy here. You can be a real wheeler dealer, actually dealing with property and landed interest. There can be difficulty with the early home environment also with this Venus-Mars, sometimes, not always. Generally though, Venus-Mars internalizes your emotions because it is the house of the subconscious mind. And the sexuality of Venus-Mars 4th house is really strong. Just like in the 8th, 12th house, Venus-Mars gets to the heights of sexual desire here. But once again, it can be hidden. It isn't always obvious. In the 7th house is obviously going to impact relationships. Mars is Modakastana here. Venus is not always so happy in the 7th house as you might think, but Venus wants to cooperate. But such obsession, strong sexual desires, and conflict with spouse will definitely be there at some point with this Venus-Mars 7th house. You do form extremely close and deep bonds with other people when you have Venus-Mars 7th house. And even if there is divorce, difficult factors by the 7th house Lord placement, etc., please see my video on that, you will generally find a way to sort of recycle relationships because ultimately Venus wants to cooperate. Now, Venus-Mars 10th house can lead to quite a lot of instability in your career endeavors unless they are really well aspected, like I say, by maybe Jupiter, and definitely well placed by sign. Sometimes you can go into artistic fields or fashion-related fields, but there's always going to be up and down. Difficult cooperation with the boss, with your co-workers, even love affairs can actually happen in the office sometimes with this Venus-Mars 10th house. Venus and Mars 2nd house can show some instability in your early home environment occasionally. Mostly though, you can even continue with family business here. Venus-Mars gives very good financial skill here. You can be a real whiz kid dealing with financial affairs. On the other hand, when it is not well placed by sign, which don't forget there are few signs where Venus-Mars is really happy, there can be a lack of caution financially. You can be impulsive, you can lose money, you can waste money. All of these things need to be considered. And most karmically and importantly, the 2nd house is a house of morality and speech. Make sure you are being truthful, non-deceptive in your speech, otherwise there can be difficult consequences. Also, are you living up to your own highest values? It's something to be aware of. All sorts of complications, litigations and arguments come when you have Venus-Mars in the 3rd, 6th and 11th house. This is where it can get a little bit disturbing. Very strong karmas here dealing with siblings. Younger, elder, doesn't really matter. It's just siblings, particularly brothers, because Mars is brothers. Karmas which draw you together and sometimes separate you, but really you need each other more than you know. Litigation lawyers and all sorts of people dealing with financial factors of other people can do very well with this Venus-Mars 3rd and 6th house. But in the 6th house, watch out for health issues. You can have accidents. Venus is in a Modakastana position here. So when you have quarrels, relationship concern, it definitely impacts on your health and well-being. In some cases, it can show intense sexual attraction or even relationships with people who are in a subordinate position to yourself because 6th house represents these people. Manipulation, difficulty, and all sorts of strange intensity in your friendship network circles can occur. Even sexual relationships can develop there, definitely with your co-workers also, when you have Venus-Mars in the 11th house. Sources of income are very much here and gone tomorrow, so you're always finding or having to seek out new sources of income. Sometimes there can be strong sexual attraction in the workplace with work colleagues. Again, this needs to be managed carefully. In the 5th and 9th, it can show broken education, difficulty focusing on educational factors, and it can show quarrels with gurus and teachers and everybody connected to education in either of these houses. But you can apply yourself to your education when you are really interested. But that is the problem. Venus-Mars gives a lot of distraction. There can be difficulties conceiving or with childbirth in a female chart, particularly with the 9th house position. Because Venus is about conception, ultimately you do tend to have children with this position. Venus-Mars shows that one child, though, may have health difficulties or have some concerns, but good aspects definitely help. In the 5th house, you can be quite creative, artistic person, or even a sporting personality very often. You have tremendous initiative, Venus, Mars, 5th house. Once again, though, it needs to be steadied. 9th house, a lot of interest in foreign lands, in foreign philosophy, religion, but also very high chance of sexual attractions and difficult, even compromising situations when you go into foreign lands. The high charisma of Venus, Mars, 5th and 9th house attracts students, followers to you if you are a teacher. Once again, highest ethics need to be there. And of course, 9th house is house of father, guru. A very strong karmic relationship shown there. Once again, you need to make sure that you are not being manipulated in any way by people who you follow as well. In both the 8th and the 12th house, you must guard yourself carefully against abusive and difficult situations, emotionally abusive situations even. Is this person really valuing you, or are you being used? Sometimes these sort of situations can occur depending on the sign and the aspects. With this Gandanta yoga, 8th and 12th house, watch for waste in your life. Wasted sexual energy, emotional energy, and even financial resources. But Venus, Mars in the 8th, 12th house gives tremendous resilience. You can bounce back from the most difficult situations. You have an inner strength definitely to overcome very many difficult, even traumatic circumstances. But strung by sign, Venus, Mars, 8th house can even show inheritance, particularly property inheritance. And in the 12th house, you can actually conserve resources amazingly well if there is good aspect. There can be quite a lot of extremes, though, in your life when you have Venus, Mars, 8th, 12th house. Many secret desires, obsessions, unrequited love, or deep, complicated emotional situations develop with either of these placements. And of course, the 12th house is foreign land, so definitely you will have strong sexual attraction to people from distant shores, or when you are in distant shores. These can be complicated, secretive, difficult if there is ill placement and ill aspect. Do you need a remedy for Venus, Mars, Gandanta yoga? You definitely do. But let's be very clear what we're aiming to do here, everybody. We don't want to make either Venus or Mars stronger in this conjunction. We need to calm down the agony fire of Mars. This will help tremendously and make Venus a lot happier. To make Mars positive and less disruptive in your life, you should definitely become non-violent in your words and in your deeds. This means you should definitely become vegetarian if you can. This will help tremendously. Mars is, of course, the son of Mother Bhumi, the earth itself, so being involved in environmental causes, as long as you are non-violent involved in them, of course, and giving to environmental charities definitely helps this whole energy, giving to non-human beings, giving to veterans, and people who are suffering in any war-torn situation. And of course, fasting on Tuesday is a most excellent remedy also. On the screen right now, don't forget to check out both Venus and Mars karmas by sign to help you understand more deeply this conjunction. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to sub below. Goodbye for now and God bless everyone.